We're going to be talking some topics related to the city of Twin Falls in this segment of the program. And joining us in studio, Travis Rothweiler. He is the city manager, and of course, Josh Palmer. He's the spokesman for the city of Twin Falls. And we have had a lot of obvious news going on. Just very quickly, I know this may be off topic from where we planned to originally go, but I saw a picture on our website of the new city hall construction the other
Yeah.
day. And when I left church on Sunday, I passed by a building on the corner that's being used as well. I mean, you got some offices downtown right now that you've moved. That's temporary, though, right?
That is temporary. We are there, and we moved in there so that we could begin immediate construction on the public safety complex, the administration portion. So the prior city hall is being transformed into a public safety administration building. That project should be complete by the 1st of March, and then they will move in. We'll start our work on the operations building. Simultaneously, we're doing the city hall construction, and by
Mm-hmm.
moving out, we're able to get an advance on all of those projects. One of the benefits was it actually saved us money. So by getting out early and paying rent, it saved us $238,000 in costs because of the construction escalators that were projected by our CMGC, Michael Arrington at Star Construction. They shared with us that catching the market when we did actually saved us money as opposed to waiting. The other benefit was the biggest need that we had was associated with our police department. The conditions that they were working in were not appropriate, and this allows us to take care of our most critical needs first, and then also be able to accommodate the city hall in an appropriate manner as well.
And we do want to remind people because I'm glad you mentioned the savings because there are people out there who they don't want to see any increase of where they were uh, where we were 10, 20 years ago. But the explosive growth in the city means more needs in the police department and more needs at City Hall. And you're only going to be moving a block away when you actually get into the new City Hall now, as it is, right? It's a
That,
short hop.
that's right. Yeah, the separation between us and the police department will be about a block, and we move about a block, generally a little bit for closer to the, uh, I guess, to the east.
Wanted to point out, too, as well, if you have a comment or question related to some city business, telephone number 736-0300, 736-0300. Obviously, we're trying to also get public safety on a par with other communities throughout Idaho because if you'd like to retain the best talent, you can't do it if they're making a third less than somebody may be making just down the highway.
Yeah, that's, Bill, I think that's absolutely right. And one of the things that was, I think, really shocking for us when they shared information, when we looked, the range difference for a 3-year police officer between us and Treasure Valley cities, excluding Boise, was 19.89% difference. And when you got to that 5-year officer mark, we actually fell to 33.58% below the Treasure Valley cities. And basically, what that created was the city of Twin Falls became a perpetual training ground. And these entities were able to offer substantial salaries in comparison to where our salary table lied. Uh, this was shared with us. I missed looking at the data. I didn't read the data in a manner that was probably appropriate, and so I may be the cause of extending this a little bit longer than what it should have. We were able to get in. We were able to work with the council last night. We were able to paint a picture for the council to see the value in this, and they approved a mid-year adjustment with the also the granting of creating a new salary plan that allows us to avoid these pitfalls moving forward in the future.
The competition for law enforcement. Number one, what I've been reading is we don't see as many young people going into it, and number two, when the county moved and moved into Percy, everybody is trying to make some changes to retain or recruit the best personnel in a very small pool that we've got right now.
That's absolutely right. So what I've been told is the number of just pure applicants going in to consider for testing is significantly less today than what it was just 10 years ago. So you have fewer individuals that are going into the profession or being called into public
Mhm.
safety. With the narrowing of pools, I think that the percentage of those individuals that you're still able to kind of matriculate through that process is about the same. but it ends up being one, two, three, four officers as opposed to developing much larger hiring lists. The other compound factor that we're experiencing in the city of Twin Falls is not only are you having that turnover as a result of compensation, but you're also having a turnover as a result of retirement. So we've had some long tenured officers who had served with us, and then they retire, and that creates another vacancy or void that we have to fill. So it really was fighting the forces on both ends, and the best thing that we can do is stabilize it on the front end to ensure that we developed a long tenured team that can assume leadership positions into the future. Because without that, we just become that perpetual training ground, and that directly impacts our ability to provide that safe community blanket that is desired by all members of our community.
We've seen something similar too in the fire department because we already have new management there overall, and I'm guessing that those changes are just coming through attrition there just as much as they are over at the police department.
They are, and when we look at not only police, but we also looked at fire, and fire is in the exact same place. Again, fire service is another profession that is not, seeing the same levels of calling that they had in the past, and they too needed to become more competitive. The good news is the steps that we've taken in the past with the past compensation adjustments really help stabilize everywhere in our organization. And one of the interesting facts, and so on an annual basis, we budget as though we're going to be fully staffed for an entire year across the organization. And on an annual basis, we've been returning about $1 million because we haven't been able to hold our staffs. 71% of those salary savings are directly related to police and fire vacancies. So if we can shore that up,
Mhm.
that means that we're going to be much more stable and we're able to put more in men and women on the streets because salary vacancies are the equivalents of position vacancies. And when you have position vacancies, that means that you're not putting the men and women on the streets that you need to provide that frontline level of public service.
Now, we talk a little bit. These are long term issues that were addressed. Maybe on the short term, I was reading in the Press Tribune out of Nampa the other day about their snow budget and what's going on with the winter weather, and it's been worse there apparently than it has been here. But we're going to see some short term specific challenges. We were talking potholes off air, and uh, obviously, if you haven't found one yet, you will soon. And so these are things we've got to address on a short term, but we can't really do it until the weather gets better.
Yeah, that's right. So, our team has been, Dean Littler, the team in the street department, they have gone the extra mile. I mean, the number of hours that they have spent occupying, the snow plows and the motor graders and everything else just to try to keep the roads passable, the priority one roads passable, that effort has been extensive. And then you go into the amount of money that we've gone through with salt and sand. And then you take that and then you start looking at the conditions of the roads as a result of potholes. And really, they've patched the potholes, but they're doing the absolute best they can under the circumstances. But until it dries and until it warms, everything that we put in is a temporary cold patch solution. And that cold patch lasts until the first few tires roll over it because we can't get it to fully connect to the existing surface. The water in there provides some other complications. And so it just continues to essentially slough out of those holes. The best thing that could happen is our team is very committed to filling those, but we don't have as many drivers on the streets as are in the community, and we're not offended when people will call and report potholes, and so we would ask them to continue to call to report them. Um, Helping us be aware of where some of those significant potholes all of a sudden spring up would be important. We don't want them to be patched with a small VW bug that tends to lose itself in there. So if they could help us avoid that before that happens, that'd be appreciated.
Yeah, that oxidization would take place then too. It'd just be even worse.
It's a little slower process though.
But that's the thing. You get the frost heaves. You get a nice day, and then all of a sudden it's cold, and then that pops it back out, and this just repeats itself until we really get into some solid spring weather.
Yeah, so we're looking at the calendar and we have about 8 more weeks of this. So
Just wonderful news.
Exactly.
We have a caller with us, and caller, you're on the air on KLIX. Our guest is Travis Rothweiler. I'll get that out. Just
I have the same problem.
yeah. He's here to actually answer a couple of questions. So, caller, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to buy a pothole.
They're cheap. They're going cheap.
Yeah, I know. I mean, seriously, I'd like to contribute something to fill a pothole or two.
Well,
I was
that would be really generous.
I was wondering if you couldn't put on something like on the sewer water bill that like they did for some of the parks and things like that, maybe.
That's a great suggestion.
Mm-hmm.
We'll look into that. We'll certainly help with the process. I think that when we look at it, the issue isn't necessarily a funding of the pothole piece, but it's really having the manpower and the knowledge. And so any help would be assistance. But we'll certainly look at the opportunities for people to assist in that. I think that shows great community spirit, and I think that that's what makes Twin Falls so great is not only are citizens like the caller saying that they really want to step up, but we had instances when we had our state of the emergency where many, many people went out and cleared their own storm drains. They really
Mm-hmm.
helped us out in that regard. They provided meals for our teams. And it's not just the street team, but it's the additional call loads that go into public safety, police, and fire with the number of accidents. It's the number of calls that our dispatch team took that day was ridiculously large.
We have another caller looking to join us. Caller, you're up next. You're on the air. It's 9:18, and you're on News Radio 1310 KLIX. Caller, go ahead.
Good morning, guys. Hey, I was just gonna make a comment. Travis, you had mentioned you guys don't have the manpower. A couple weeks ago, I participated in a service project over for the city of Jerome filling sandbags, and that was put together within just a couple hours of the city putting out a call for volunteers to come in and help fill sandbags and get those ready to go. Is that something you guys have explored, or don't limit your options to using the community because people are loving to go out and do service? So, just an option.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I think that when I was talking about the availability of manpower, I'm thinking about, we have not only so when you think about the street department, they have a series of routine tasks that they have to go forward with, and then when you have the proliferation of the potholes that we're experiencing, that adds and increases to the workloads, probably beyond a point. But I'm not certain if there's an opportunity for the community to assist, but I'm going to talk to the members of our team to find out if there's a pothole brigade that we could create in the community and kind of go help us patch these as they spring up. That might be a great suggestion, and we'll certainly look into it.
We can you stick around a few more minutes?
I can.
Because a couple of this stirred a couple of other thoughts as well about other areas we might see some after the snow and ice melt. We're going to see a lot of things that we maybe haven't yet noticed. Right now we've got 17 and short break coming up. You're listening to Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, newsradio1310.com. We're joined by City Manager Travis Rothweiler from the City of Twin Falls. Josh Palmer here as well, spokesman for the city. And Bill Colley with you this morning until 10 o'clock. Talking some issues related to the city today, and City Manager Travis Rothweiler in studio with us. Bill Colley with you as well on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Josh Palmer is here doing his job, which means he's kind of standing off to the side. We get him involved once in a while. You did read my column today?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, so you're a hockey fan.
I am. Go Bruins, but I think your Capitals might be a little bit further along.
Just I wanted to reference that very quickly. We were talking a little bit about volunteerism and people helping out with some of the issues related, especially to this winter being so harsh. And I got to thinking about when I'm out walking the trails. Now, there's not a lot of activity on the trails and places like that at this point this year because of the weather. But as soon as it clears, you're going to have the people who get out and they do their daily walks. They're going to be seeing, I'm sure, um, I don't know if I'd call them cave-ins, but there's spots on the trail where there may have been some erosion beneath the asphalt and some of the wooden spots may need replacement. So people need to keep their eye out for these things.
Yeah, we certainly. I mean, I think whether you're on the roadways or whether you're going to be on the trails, any time that you're going to be on them in this time of year, we would, I think that you just need to use a little bit of extra caution. There could be some black ice on either surface that could cause a slip and a fall, and we'd certainly hate to see that. But I think you're absolutely right. Then you start looking at as we continue to go through this frost and then melt and then freeze cycle
Hmm.
over and over as we continue to warm towards spring, um, you're going to start seeing some degradation of the roads and the trail systems. And again, as you see those, please alert us to those so that we can correct them when they're in their infancy, as opposed to becoming a significant public safety issue. And riding a bicycle on a trail can be just as dangerous when you hit a pothole, if not more, than hitting a pothole in a vehicle.
And sometimes you don't know about that. There's been some erosion underneath as it flows to the canyon, and the asphalt might look solid, but there's nothing beneath it in some spots.
That could be the case.
And I've seen a couple of those that pop up now and then. And we should point out too as well. You referenced salt and sand, but mostly we're using sand on city streets.
It's mostly sand, and what our team has done is they've perfected a mixture of salt and sand, and it's not a significant amount of salt,
Mhm.
but what it does is it allows for that melting to occur, and without causing significant harms to the underbody of vehicles that you may think of that when they used to pour just salt on the roads in the
Mhm.
past. So it's a very good mixture. Our team spent quite a bit of time educating me and the council in a public presentation about all the different steps that they've looked at. The use of sand and salt is the most cost-effective measure, and it's also the most temperature-effective measure that we've had. We've experimented with beet pulp. We've experimented with a whole host of other magnesium chloride, I believe, was
Salt
another
brine.
one. Some salt brine, and we may be looking at some different things in the future. One of the things our team likes to do is to apply an application to the roadway so that the ice doesn't create instant stick, but it
Mhm.
can be more the way I understood it, kind of be peeled off, and it doesn't create that intense sticking that you see that causes the ruts. And so right now you're almost seeing that wheel pattern in between ice. If we can avoid that by pre-treating roadways in the future, that might help us go a long ways as well.
Now, got one caller we'll take on the air quickly here, and we've got about 3 minutes to go. Caller, you're up next. You're on the air. Comment or question?
Hello, am I on?
You are. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I'm just curious. One of the reasons I like living in the West is because they generally use just sand and gravel. I'm curious why they're using salt. Salt is very destructive to our vehicles. I would never buy a vehicle that lived out east.
Yeah, just kind of like what we had shared. Part of the reason is because the purpose of the sand is to help with the traction. The purpose of the salt is to assist with the melting, to have that spray across. And we agree that there are certain concentrations that are going to be hazardous to the undercarriage of a vehicle. But I know that our team has spent quite a bit of time researching the proper levels of sand, and really what they're using is an insignificant amount. I would almost describe it as, a dash, if you will, to assist with more of that melting, to ensure that the roadways, once it does reach temperatures that it can melt, that can be cleared through the assistance of sunlight, as opposed to having to run a plow. And that's a different fact that I'd also like to share. So when you look at a state road, they are able to use like a steel bit on the bottom of their plows, and they're able to make direct contact with that roadway and push that off. We have to use a rubber bit because of the manholes that we place, the water meters, everything. That if we hit those, they actually become flying objects, and they can actually do significant damage. So the rubber bit pushes it off, but it doesn't make that hard contact that you'll see on the state highway system. And so by doing a sand salt mixture, it gives us that extra help to kind of push that a little bit additional part
As
off.
long as the temperature is under 32, there's not going to be any rusting going on the vehicles anyway. But for the caller, 2 words: rocket wash. Uh, and people do wash their cars now and then, I would imagine. So as soon as the temperature warms up, you can rinse it away. When I lived in Syracuse, New York, we've got to close here in a moment, but the streets commissioner there told me one time that people expected to drive, if they'd had 8 to 12 inches of snow overnight, they expected it to be black pavement by mid morning, and it was. But my mother bought a new car in 2001, and by 2005, there wasn't much of the body left on that vehicle because of that, and I was replacing exhaust systems every other year just because of that, and it gets to be a little costly. So here we take a little more responsibility when you drive, but your automobile is going to last longer because of it.
That's right.
Want to thank you both for coming by today,
Thank
and
you.
we've got to do this again sometime soon
Absolutely.
when we start to get into spring and we actually see the problems we talked about today, or the challenges might be a better way to put that. We'll maybe delve into that. We're at 19, on our way into the mid-30s today. Time to wash the car. We've got another half hour to go on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and NewsRadio1310.com.